The crimson sun, an omen of the ceaseless conflict, bled across the desolate plains of Ethel. Below, a symphony of steel and screams echoed, the grim final movement of humanity's desperate stand. Kyle, the ironclad vanguard, humanity's last bastion against the encroaching darkness, fought with the ferocity of a cornered lion. His armor, once gleaming steel, was now a tapestry of dents and gashes, each scar a testament to battles fought and sacrifices made. His colossal, soul-forged greatsword, usually humming with divine energy, now pulsed erratically, its light flickering like a dying ember. Around him, the last remnants of the united human front fell one by one, consumed by the ravenous tide of demons. His breath hitched, a ragged gasp torn from his throat as he parried a clawed strike from a towering greater abyssal demon. The force of the blow sent tremors through his entire body, the very bones in his arms protesting. He was tired, so utterly, bone-weary tired. For decades, he had lived on the battlefield, witnessed countless horrors, and endured unimaginable losses. He had seen the proud cities of men crumble, their advanced arcane technologies and mana-based defenses proving futile against the relentless reality-bending onslaught of the demonic hordes. He had fought through the great cleansing wars, through the era of shadow, always pushing, always leading, always the shield that protected humanity. But even a shield, no matter how strong, eventually shatters. Then, the demon lord, a towering silhouette against the infernal sky, descended. Its form was anathema, a swirling vortex of shadow and malice, its eyes twin pits of consuming darkness. Power, raw and ancient, radiated from it, crushing the very air. Kale knew this was the end. He had faced its harbingers, its lieutenants, but never the true sovereign of the abyss. This was not a fight he could win. Not now. Not when his mana reserves were depleted, his body ravaged by countless injuries, and his allies reduced to scattered corpses. A guttural roar ripped from Kale's throat, a defiant challenge hurled at the face of oblivion. He pushed past the agony, channeling every last drop of his will, every lingering ounce of divine energy into one final desperate charge. His greatsword, with a final surge of fading light, met the demon lord's impossibly sharp claw. The clash resonated across the battlefield, a mournful knell for a dying world. But it was futile. The demon lord's power was absolute, unyielding. The great sword shattered, its soul-forged steel splintering into a million fragments of light, echoing the breaking of Kale's spirit. A wave of pure, concentrated demonic energy slammed into him, a force that ripped through his armor, through his flesh, through his very soul. He felt a searing, unimaginable pain, a cold fire consuming him from within. His vision blurred, the crimson sky spinning wildly, the screams of the demons fading into a distant roar. He was falling, humanity's last hope, crashing down. This can't be the end, he thought, his consciousness rapidly fading, dissolving into the encroaching darkness. Not like this, not after everything. Despair, cold and absolute, threatened to consume him. He had failed. Humanity was lost. The world of Ethel, once vibrant with life and magic, would be subsumed by the abyss. Then, amidst the crushing despair, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor resonated within the deepest recesses of his being. It was the echo of an ancient legend, a whispered tale from a forgotten era, a desperate gambit for a second chance. The Chronos Shard, a forbidden artifact, rumored to exist only in the sealed vaults of the long-lost Temple of Aeon, capable of manipulating the very flow of time. It was a myth, a last-ditch fantasy he had clung to in his darkest moments, never truly believing in its existence. But in his dying breath, a desperate, impossible hope ignited. With a final monumental effort, a desperate raw surge of his dying will, Kale reached for it. Not physically, but with his fading consciousness, a desperate plea to the universe itself. He had once stumbled upon the shard during a perilous deep dungeon exploration, its faint temporal energy calling to him even then. He hadn't understood its true function, merely sealing it away, deeming it too dangerous, too powerful for mortal hands. But now, as oblivion beckoned, danger was irrelevant. He willed it. The Chronos Shard, still sealed within a dimensional pocket he had forgotten existed, activated. A searing, blinding light erupted from within his dying form. Not the demonic crimson of the demon lord, but a pure, unearthly blue that pulsed with the very essence of time. He felt a violent, agonizing sensation, as if his entire existence was being stretched and torn apart. It wasn't the blissful embrace of death, it was a cosmic ripping, a terrifying deconstruction of his consciousness. A second chance, he thought, clinging to the mantra as his soul was wrenched from his dying body, ripped through the fabric of time and space itself. He expected to find himself back in his prime, perhaps at the beginning of the demon incursions, armed with the knowledge of hindsight. He envisioned the strategic advantages, the battles he could turn, the lives he could save. He would avert the apocalypse. He would save Ethel. But the journey was not gentle. It was a chaotic, disorienting freefall through a vortex of flashing images and distorted echoes. He saw glimpses of forgotten eras, of worlds yet to be, of realities he couldn't comprehend. He felt his memories, his skills, his very essence being compressed, distilled, yet miraculously preserved within the core of his being. This wasn't a simple restart. This was something else entirely. Then the tearing sensation abruptly ceased. He felt a sudden profound warmth, a soft, enveloping pressure. He was no longer falling through the void. He was cradled. A muted light filtered through what felt like soft, pink flesh. He heard distant sounds, muffled and distorted, yet undeniably human. A gentle rocking sensation soothed him. He tried to open his eyes, but they were weak, unfocused, overwhelmed by the faint light. He tried to move his limbs, but they were impossibly small, uncoordinated, utterly alien to his experienced warrior's mind. His body felt tiny, fragile. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prickle at the edges of his consciousness. What was this? This wasn't the battlefield. This wasn't the past he knew. He tried to speak, to roar, to demand answers, but only a tiny, gurgling cry escaped his lips. A soft, soothing voice, warm and gentle, murmured above him, "Oh, my precious little one, so strong, even now." Little one? His mind, still reeling from the cosmic journey, struggled to comprehend. He felt a soft cloth against his skin, then a gentle patting sensation. He was being changed, like a swaddled infant. The truth, horrifying and undeniable, slammed into him with the force of a full-body blow. He was a baby. He was reborn, but not into his past. His soul, ripped through the conventional flow of time, had been sent back to a time before his birth, to an era long before the demon incursions, before the rise of magic, before the very concept of monsters scarred the world of Ethel. He could feel it instinctively, the absence of pervasive mana, the lack of the subtle hum of demonic energy that had been a constant companion in his previous life. This world was untainted, pristine. The implications were staggering. His millennia of accumulated knowledge, battle strategies, arcane weaknesses of demons, the intricate workings of forgotten magic circuits, the political machinations of kingdoms now dust, all of it intact within the mind of a helpless infant. He was a paradox, a warrior king reborn as a mewling babe. He lay there, utterly powerless, yet brimming with the wisdom of an entire apocalyptic future. The soft sounds of a loving, attentive mother filled his ears. He was safe, too safe. His helplessness was maddening. He, Kyle, who had commanded armies and felled legions of demons, could do nothing but squirm and gurgle. A bitter laugh bubbled up within his infant mind, a sound no one else could hear. This wasn't a simple restart. This was a cosmic jest, a cruel irony. He had begged for a second chance, and the universe had given him an entire lifetime, a fresh canvas, but stripped him of every tool he once possessed. Yet, beneath the despair, a flicker of something else began to ignite. This wasn't the past he knew. This was a new past, a world untouched by the very blight that had consumed his previous existence. If magic and monsters were yet to emerge, if the abyss gates had not yet opened, then he had a chance not just to save his past self, but to truly avert the apocalypse, to fundamentally reshape the destiny of Ethel. He felt the warmth of his new mother's embrace, the gentle rhythm of her heartbeat. He was utterly vulnerable, dependent on these unknown kind strangers, but his mind was a fortress of knowledge, a living library of a future that must never come to pass. He, Kyle, the ironclad vanguard, was dead. Long live whoever this new, tiny body was. The regressor had taken his last breath, and with it, a new, impossible journey had begun. The king of humanity had fallen, only to be reborn as the smallest, yet most knowledgeable piece on the cosmic chessboard of time. The future of Ethel rested on the shoulders of an infant, armed with the memories of a world consumed by fire. Chapter 2. A Child Prodigy's Secret. The warmth of the sun on his infant skin, the soft murmur of his new mother's lullabies, the gentle scent of fresh linen. These were the unfamiliar sensations of Elian's new reality. Yet beneath this veneer of pastoral bliss churned the mind of Kyle, the ironclad vanguard, humanity's last hope. The juxtaposition was jarring, a constant agonizing discord. He, who had commanded armies, whose very presence inspired courage in the hearts of weary soldiers, was now utterly dependent, his every need catered to by hands far larger and stronger than his own tiny flailing limbs. The sheer, infuriating helplessness of his new form was a bitter pill to swallow. He tried to move, to stand, to simply direct his gaze with purpose. But his infant body betrayed him. His muscles, once honed to peak physical perfection through decades of grueling combat against demonic incursions, were now soft, undeveloped, utterly useless. His once unwavering focus, capable of discerning the slightest shift in an enemy's mana signature, was now blurred by the primal demands of hunger, sleep, and discomfort. He was trapped. A colossal intellect, a warrior spirit, encased within the fragile confines of a newborn. This is a new kind of hell, he thought, his infant wails echoing his internal frustration. He, who had faced down the demon lord himself, was now defeated by the simple act of trying to roll over. The absurdity of his situation would have been comical had it not been so profoundly maddening. Yet even in this state of profound vulnerability, the instincts of a seasoned warrior and strategist began to assert themselves. His past life, a torrent of memories and knowledge, was not just intact. It was sharper, clearer, unburdened by the constant threat of immediate death. He remembered the intricate arcane theories Seraphina had painstakingly taught him, the forgotten combat techniques from the First Era, the subtle weaknesses of various demonic species. It was all there, a vast, accessible library within his infant mind. And he quickly discovered something else, something extraordinary about his new cognitive abilities. His infant brain, untainted by the complex filters and accumulated biases of adulthood, seemed to absorb information at an unprecedented rate. He listened to the simple nursery rhymes his mother sang, and his mind dissected the linguistic patterns, the vocal inflections, storing them with perfect recall. He observed the rudimentary tools his father used in the workshop, and his mind instantly grasped the principles of leverage, metallurgy, and basic mechanics. It was as if his consciousness, forcibly regressed, had unlocked a fundamental capacity for learning that transcended normal human development. He was a sponge, soaking up every scrap of data from this new, untouched world. This is my advantage, he realized, a flicker of cold, calculated hope igniting within him. This wasn't just a rebirth, it was a retooling. He was starting from scratch, but with the ultimate blueprint. He was in a world untainted by magic or monsters, a pre-apocalyptic era. The abyss gates had not yet opened. The subtle hum of demonic energy was absent. This was the calm before the storm, and he, Kyle, was the only one who knew the tempest was coming. His goal solidified, crystal clear and absolute, to acquire the fundamental skills needed for magic and combat long before they were formally introduced to this world. He would not wait for the inevitable demon incursions. He would prepare. He would build a foundation so unshakable, so fundamentally superior, that when the time came, humanity would not just survive, it would triumph. His training regimen began almost immediately, a secret internal discipline unknown to his loving, oblivious parents. It started with the most basic, muscle control. Lying in his crib, he would focus every ounce of his infant will on moving a single finger, then a toe, then his entire hand. It was agonizingly slow, a testament to the sheer physical limitation of his new body, but his mind, accustomed to pushing beyond limits, refused to yield. He understood the intricate biomechanics of the human body from his past life, the precise nerve impulses and muscle contractions. He was effectively reverse engineering his own physical development. He learned to crawl, not just for locomotion, but as an exercise in core strength and balance. Each wobbly step, each clumsy movement was a calculated progression. He would spend hours, unseen within the confines of his crib or playpen, performing isometric contractions, strengthening tiny muscles, building a foundation for the warrior he would become. His parents marveled at his rapid physical development, dismissing it as the unique vigor of their precious child, unaware of the iron will driving his every seemingly innocent movement. His mental disciplines were even more rigorous. He used his extraordinary cognitive abilities to absorb every book he could lay his tiny hands on, even if it meant simply staring at the symbols. His mind intuiting the meaning, understanding complex concepts from rudimentary pictorial representations. His parents, delighted by his precocious interest in books, inadvertently fueled his secret education. He devoured histories, philosophies, and even early scientific treatises, filing away every piece of information, cross-referencing it with his vast knowledge of the future. He identified the rudimentary precursors to arcane theories, the foundational natural laws that would later be harnessed for magic. He began to form mental blueprints for mana storage techniques, drawing on his experiences in a world saturated with mystical energy. As he grew, his secret training regimen intensified. By the time he was a toddler, his coordination was already far beyond his peers. He practiced basic combat stances in secret, using the movements of animals or even the rhythm of household chores to mask his exercises. He observed the physical labor of the adults around him, analyzing their movements, identifying inefficiencies, and mentally perfecting the most energy-efficient methods for wielding tools. Understanding that these principles would translate directly to wielding a sword or casting a spell. His internal monologues became a constant companion, a private forum for strategy and self-improvement. If I can master my body at this foundational level, then when the mana awakens, my control will be absolute. He visualized the complex runic formations of advanced spells, breaking them down into their simplest components, mentally practicing the intricate etheric flow required for their execution. He understood that true mastery wasn't just about raw power, but about precision, efficiency, and fundamental understanding. The constant struggle to maintain his warrior's mindset within a child's body was a unique form of torment. He yearned for the strength to protect, the ability to act, to prepare the world for the coming darkness. Yet, he was forced to endure the playful interactions of childhood, the innocent joys and mundane routines that felt profoundly alien to his battle-hardened soul. He had to suppress his adult instincts, to feign ignorance, to appear as just another curious, precocious child. This constant pretense was a heavy burden, a mask he wore to protect his secret, to ensure his mission was not jeopardized. He began to notice the subtle stirrings of what would eventually become magic. The faint shimmering of mana particles in the air, barely perceptible, ignored by the unawakened. He, Kyle, with his vast experience of a mana-saturated world, could feel them, tiny sparks of dormant power. He began to secretly practice mana cultivation techniques, drawing on the forgotten knowledge from his past life. It was slow, painstaking work, like trying to fill a bucket with a single drop of water at a time. But he persevered. He felt the subtle hum of elemental affinity within the nascent mana, identifying the precursors to the powerful spells he knew from the future. His mind raced through the historical timelines he knew, identifying key moments, crucial discoveries that led to the rise of magic, and subsequently, the demon incursions. He realized the importance of not just acquiring power, but guiding this world's development. He couldn't simply teach them everything he knew. Such knowledge, if introduced too soon, too violently, could shatter this fragile, peaceful era, leading to unforeseen consequences or even accelerating the apocalypse. He had to be subtle, a hidden hand guiding destiny. He also recognized the importance of social dynamics and political influence. In his previous life, the social class tensions and the fragmented kingdoms had often hampered humanity's unified response to the demonic threat. This time, he would understand the political landscape, build influence from the ground up, perhaps even foster a stronger, more unified humanity. He observed the subtle power plays among the local villagers, the nascent formations of trade routes, the simple disputes that would eventually evolve into complex diplomatic relations. He was absorbing socio-political data as keenly as he absorbed physical mechanics. By the time he reached his preteen years, Elian possessed a physical prowess and mental acuity that bordered on the superhuman, though carefully masked to appear merely exceptional. He excelled in every physical activity, every academic pursuit, astounding his teachers and peers. He was a child prodigy, a brilliant mind, and a naturally gifted athlete, but no one suspected the ancient warrior, the king of humanity, lurking beneath the surface. He could now perform basic mana channeling exercises without conscious thought, drawing ambient mana into his nascent mana core, strengthening it, preparing it for the future. He could execute complex sword forms with a simple wooden stick, his movements fluid and precise, the echo of a forgotten mastery. He was ready for the awakening of magic, ready for the appearance of monsters, ready to mold this untainted world into a bulwark against the coming darkness. The struggle to reconcile his past as a hardened warrior with his present as an innocent child continued, a silent battle fought within the confines of his own mind. But with each secret training session, with each piece of knowledge absorbed, the bridge between the two selves strengthened. He was no longer just Kyle, the dying warrior. He was Elian, the child prodigy, the silent architect of a new future. His secret, a monumental burden, was also his greatest weapon. He was humanity's second chance, and he would not fail. The seeds of a new destiny were being sown, carefully, meticulously, by the smallest hands, with the oldest soul. Chapter 3. Seeds of Early Mastery. The innocent laughter of children echoed through the sun-dappled village square, a symphony of carefree youth that often jarred with the ancient, battle-hardened soul trapped within Elian. Days bled into weeks, then months, each one a meticulous step in his secret regimen. He was Kale, the ironclad vanguard, humanity's last hope, now disguised as a child prodigy. His new miniature form, once a source of maddening frustration, was slowly, painstakingly becoming his most potent tool. He couldn't wield a soul-forged greatsword yet, nor could he unleash devastating arcane spells, but he could lay the foundations, brick by excruciating brick, for the warrior who would inevitably face the demon lord once more. His childish pursuits were in reality carefully orchestrated exercises, designed with the precision of a master strategist. He observed the world around him, this pristine, pre-apocalyptic Ethel, identifying its fundamental principles, the raw materials he would shape into weapons against the coming darkness. He knew magic and monsters would eventually arrive, heralded by the opening of the abyss gates. He knew the subtle mana particles that shimmered in the air, imperceptible to the unawakened, would one day coalesce into powerful mana flows. His mission was to be ready long before anyone else. His first, seemingly mundane hobby was calligraphy. The delicate art of brush and ink, taught by a kindly elderly tutor, became his secret crucible for mana control. To the tutor, Elian's meticulous strokes, his unwavering focus on perfecting each character, were signs of extraordinary artistic talent. But to Elian, each brushstroke was an exercise in etheric flow management. Focus, he would tell himself, his tiny hand gripping the brush with a grip far steadier than any child his age. Feel the ink, feel its resistance. Guide it, just as I will one day guide the raw mana through my veins. He envisioned the ink as pure mana, the brush as an extension of his will. He practiced the minute adjustments of pressure, the precise control of his breath, the subtle movements of his wrist, each a microcosm of the intricate control required for casting complex spells. He wasn't just drawing characters, he was building his mana core, subtly enhancing his mana sensitivity, preparing his nascent arcane circuits for the torrent of energy that would one day flow through them. He knew from his past life that uncontrolled mana could lead to disastrous backlashes or inefficient spellcasting. This was his early mastery hidden in plain sight. His second pursuit was the study of ancient texts. While other children his age learned simple stories and nursery rhymes, Elian, with his insatiable curiosity and extraordinary cognitive abilities, gravitated towards the dusty, forgotten scrolls and worn tomes in his family's modest library. His tutors, initially perplexed by his preference for dense historical chronicles and philosophical treatises, soon marveled at his precocious comprehension. They believed he simply had an exceptional intellect. They had no idea he was seeking the very blueprints of a lost age. He devoured texts on natural philosophy, on the elemental compositions of the world, on the subtle interactions between flora and fauna. His mind, armed with the knowledge of a future steeped in elemental magic, began to connect the dots. He understood the rudimentary scientific observations as the foundational principles of elemental affinities. He saw how the properties of fire, water, earth, and wind, once merely natural phenomena, would one day be harnessed and manipulated as powerful elemental magic. He identified the early crude diagrams of energy systems and began to mentally translate them into complex runic formations and spell arrays he knew from the future. He wasn't just reading, he was reverse engineering the very evolution of magic, mentally preparing for its eventual emergence. He would master elemental manipulation long before the concept even existed in this era. His third, and perhaps most deceptively simple, hobby was engaging in seemingly innocent games. While other children played hide-and-seek or chased after each other in aimless abandon, Elian's games were meticulously crafted exercises in tactical thinking and strategic planning. He would organize complex games of capture the flag with his peers, silently analyzing their movements, predicting their decisions, and devising intricate flanking maneuvers. He played elaborate games with toy soldiers, meticulously planning formations, anticipating counterattacks, and optimizing resource distribution. Each game is a battlefield, he mused, his young eyes gleaming with an intensity that belied his age. Each opponent is a potential foe. Each victory is a lesson in strategy. He applied the principles of military tactics he had perfected over decades of war: supply line management, reconnaissance, flanking maneuvers, terrain exploitation, and enemy psychology. He learned to read subtle tells, to anticipate reactions, to manipulate outcomes without revealing his true understanding. These were not just childish pastimes. They were clandestine drills for commanding armies, for navigating complex political landscapes, for outmaneuvering the cunning strategies of demonic commanders. He was building his strategic intuition, honing his leadership qualities long before he would lead men into actual battle. His physical training, disguised as innocent play, continued unabated. He practiced balance and agility by climbing trees with a precision that astonished onlookers, mimicking the fluid movements of assassin-class players he had encountered. He honed his endurance by running endlessly, pushing his small body to its limits, believing he was merely enjoying the freedom of childhood. He adapted basic martial arts stances from his past life into forms that looked like energetic stretches, subtly strengthening his joints, developing his muscle memory for future combat. His parents and tutors watched in disbelief as their child grew into a whirlwind of talent, unusually coordinated, incredibly quick-witted, and possessing an unflagging energy that seemed boundless. "Young Elian learns faster than any student I have ever had," his calligraphy tutor remarked to his parents, a note of bewildered admiration in his voice. His control of the brush is almost supernatural, as if the ink itself bends to his will. His history tutor, equally perplexed, once mused, "He asks questions, not about what happened, but why it happened. He sees connections in ancient events that even seasoned scholars overlook. It's as if he possesses a wisdom far beyond his years. They attributed it to divine blessing, to a unique genius. They had no way of knowing it was the accumulated wisdom of a dead world." The challenges were immense. The constant need to suppress his adult reactions, his instinctive desire to take charge, to correct inefficiencies, was a daily struggle. He had to temper his intellect, to present his insights as innocent questions or lucky guesses. He endured the frustration of physical limitations, the gnawing impatience of knowing what was to come, yet being unable to accelerate the world's development. He yearned for the day he could openly train, openly lead, openly prepare. Yet with each small victory, with each newly acquired skill, the silent satisfaction was immense. He was building himself anew, not just as a stronger warrior, but as a more complete strategist, a more profound understanding of the forces that shaped his world. He was cultivating his future mana pool through silent meditation, strengthening his spiritual core through focused internal discipline. He was learning to listen to the faint whispers of the world's latent energy, distinguishing between the pure mana that would empower humanity and the subtle corrupting influence that heralded the coming demons. Elian the child was becoming a conduit for a forgotten power, a vessel for a reborn legend. His seemingly innocent games and studies were the very seeds of his future mastery. His family and tutors unknowingly were witnessing the birth of a legend, a chosen one forged not by prophecy, but by the bitter lessons of a lost future. He was a secret weapon, growing stronger with each passing day, preparing to redefine the destiny of Ethel. The world remained oblivious to the silent war being waged within the mind of a child, a war for survival that would determine the fate of all creation. Chapter 4. The Whispers of Mana. The world, to the innocent eyes of its inhabitants, was still a tapestry of rolling hills, bustling villages, and the comforting predictability of nature. But to Elian, the child with the soul of Kale, the ironclad vanguard, a profound shift was beginning. As he approached the cusp of adolescence, a subtle, almost imperceptible change permeated the very air of Ethel. It was the whispers of mana. To others, this nascent energy was nothing more than a faint shimmer in the sunlight, an unexplainable prickle on the skin, a fleeting sense of warmth in the cool breeze. They dismissed it as folklore, as the fanciful dreams of bards. But to Elian, steeped in the memories of a world saturated with mystical power, the whispers were a roar. The ambient mana particles, once scarce and scattered, were now coalescing, growing stronger, humming with a nascent energy that resonated deep within his pre-cultivated mana core. He felt it in every fiber of his being, a return to the essence of the world he knew, a chilling harbinger of the apocalypse he was desperately trying to prevent. His secret training, meticulously crafted over years of childhood, had prepared him for this moment. His mana core, subtly strengthened through countless hours of disguised cultivation, pulsed with anticipation. His arcane circuits, carefully primed through meticulous calligraphy practice, felt ready to channel the nascent energy. He had been preparing for the awakening, and now it was finally beginning. He found secluded spots in the quiet forest bordering his village, places where the mana gathered in slightly denser pockets, where the very trees seemed to hum with a quiet energy. Here, under the watchful eyes of only the ancient trees, he began to practice. He started with the most rudimentary of spells, the simple manipulations of elemental affinity that would one day form the foundation of powerful magic. He focused on a fallen leaf, its delicate veins exposed to the subtle mana. He channeled the nascent mana from the air, guiding it with a precision that defied his age, a control born from years of practicing etheric flow management through calligraphy. A faint ethereal glow enveloped the leaf, and then, with a minuscule puff of air, it disintegrated into dust. Not burned, not crushed, but gently unmade. This was the most basic disintegration spell, a feat that would astound even the most seasoned archmages in his previous life. But to him, it was merely the first step. He moved on to fire elementals. He held out his hand, visualizing the heat, the destructive potential. The mana around him responded, and a tiny flickering flame danced above his palm. It was no larger than a candle flame, but its existence in a world yet untouched by magic was a monumental achievement. He didn't just conjure it, he controlled it, making it dance, ebb, and flow with exquisite precision. His understanding of elemental properties, gleaned from years of studying ancient texts, allowed him to bypass the usual trial and error that future magic users would endure. He was refining techniques before others even grasped their basic concepts. Simultaneously, he refined his combat techniques. The subtle shifts in mana density in the air allowed him to predict environmental changes to enhance his already prodigious physical prowess. He began to integrate rudimentary mana reinforcement into his movements, subtly enhancing his speed, strength, and agility during his playful runs through the forest. A simple jump became a test of mana-enhanced leaps, a swing of a stick, a practice of mana-infused strikes. He was, in essence, developing his own unique class skills long before the formal concept of classes or abilities even entered the lexicon of this world. The mental challenge was immense. He grappled with a profound ethical dilemma: how much to reveal and when. His past life screamed at him to act, to teach, to warn. The demon incursions were coming. The world was oblivious, innocent. He could accelerate their technological and magical development by decades, perhaps even centuries. He could arm them, prepare them, turn this peaceful era into a bulwark against the coming storm. But a deeper, more chilling wisdom, born from the bitter lessons of his previous life, held him back. He remembered the chaos that ensued when powerful magic was discovered too quickly, when mana-rich artifacts fell into the wrong hands. He recalled the internal strife that had plagued humanity, the social class tensions exacerbated by disparities in magical talent. He remembered the early disastrous attempts at Abyss Gate sealing, which often only strengthened the demons. Knowledge, if unleashed too soon, could be as destructive as the demons themselves. This world was fragile, its societal structures not yet ready for the profound shift magic would bring. If I reveal too much, too soon, he reasoned, his child's brow furrowed in concentration, I risk creating an even worse future. Humanity could tear itself apart before the demons even arrive. Or worse, my actions could inadvertently accelerate the opening of the Abyss Gates. The thought was a cold dread in his stomach. He was walking a tightrope between salvation and inadvertently condemning humanity to an even swifter, more agonizing doom. He continued his secret training, his progress astonishing even to himself. He experimented with healing magic, envisioning the mana knitting together simple cuts and bruises with startling speed. He explored illusion spells, learning to subtly bend light and sound, creating momentary distortions that only he could perceive. Each success solidified his belief in his unique path. He was not just preparing for the future, he was actively shaping it, subtly, carefully, from the shadows. His family and tutors continued to be astonished by his precocious talent. His calligraphy tutor marveled at his unnatural precision. His history tutor spoke of his intuitive grasp of the natural world. His playmates were simply baffled by his uncanny ability to win every game, to predict their moves, to appear and disappear with almost supernatural stealth. They saw a brilliant child, a prodigy, but they were unknowingly witnessing the birth of a legend, the quiet forging of a king. The internal conflict gnawed at him. He saw instances where his knowledge could prevent minor tragedies, where a simple spell could alleviate suffering. He observed the nascent social hierarchies, the subtle injustices, and the nascent political squabbles that in his previous life had eventually blossomed into devastating civil wars. He yearned to intervene, to guide them, to create a perfect society before the demons arrived, but he knew he couldn't. Not yet. He recognized the importance of timing. Magic would eventually awaken on its own, through natural discovery or the gradual influx of ambient mana. He had to wait for that natural progression to allow humanity to adapt, to accept magic as a gradual evolution, not a sudden terrifying revelation. His role, he concluded, was to be ready when that time came, to guide the first awakeners, to ensure the knowledge of magic was disseminated responsibly, to prevent the same mistakes that had doomed Ethel in his previous life. He continued to meticulously refine his abilities, not for show, but for absolute mastery. He honed his mana efficiency, ensuring every spell, every reinforced movement consumed the bare minimum of energy. He practiced silent casting, eliminating the need for incantations, allowing him to surprise his foes. He began to mentally construct complex spell arrays, laying the groundwork for the powerful archmage abilities he would one day wield. His body, though still that of a growing boy, felt increasingly like a finely tuned instrument, responding with perfect precision to his will. The burden of his secret was immense, a constant companion in his solitude. He lived a double life. An adored child by day, a relentless warrior and mage in training by night, in the quiet corners of the world only he knew. He was a paradox, a king in swaddling clothes, a savior whose greatest strength was his hidden knowledge. The whispers of mana grew louder with each passing year, a constant reminder of the encroaching darkness. But now, amidst the quiet hum of an awakening world, Elian, the child prodigy, was ready. The seeds of his early mastery were deeply sown, destined to blossom into the power that would either save or reshape Ethel's destiny. He was the quiet storm, building his strength, waiting for the precise moment to unleash the full force of a future that must never be. Chapter 5. Unveiling Hidden Talents. The hum of mana in the air, once a whisper, was now a nascent song, growing louder with each passing season. Humanity, oblivious to the coming storm, began to sense its presence, not as a threat, but as a newfound wonder. This was the dawn of magic, a slow, cautious awakening that Elian, the child with the soul of Kale, the ironclad vanguard, had meticulously prepared for. His years of secret training, of cultivating his mana core and honing his arcane circuits, had led him to this pivotal moment. The grand announcement rippled through the kingdom. The Ether Academy was opening its doors. It was the first formal institution dedicated to the study and mastery of this newly perceived energy, a beacon of progress in a world unknowingly teetering on the brink of apocalypse. To the populace, it was a symbol of hope, a chance for commoners and nobles alike to harness the mysterious power now infusing their world. To Elian, it was the next crucial step in his silent war, the perfect stage to unveil his hidden talents. The entrance exams were a chaotic flurry of raw, untrained mana surges and clumsy attempts at elemental manipulation. Aspiring mages, their faces a mixture of excitement and trepidation, struggled to even conjure a flickering flame or lift a pebble with their nascent abilities. Elian moved through the tests with practiced ease, his movements fluid, his control absolute. He performed exactly as a highly talented, but still normal burgeoning mage would. He conjured a stable fist-sized flame, not a roaring inferno. He lifted a small boulder, not a colossal rock. He feigned the appropriate amount of awe and exertion, subtly masking the effortless precision born from decades of hidden mastery. His goal wasn't to overwhelm, but to intrigue, to position himself without drawing undue dangerous attention. He easily passed, his scores placing him among the top echelon of the incoming students. The instructors, seasoned scholars, and former warriors who were only just beginning to grasp the rudiments of mana theory themselves, lauded his natural talent and innate understanding. They believed they were witnessing a gifted youth, a promising new student. They had no idea they were looking at a living legend. Early lessons at the Ether Academy were a tedious exercise in patience for Elian. While other students grappled with the simplest concepts of etheric flow and runic incantations, Elian mentally sped through complex spell arrays and mana-efficient casting techniques. He found himself constantly holding back, suppressing his instincts, forced to relearn what he had already perfected in his previous life. He listened to the instructor's rudimentary explanations of elemental affinities, mentally correcting their incomplete theories, refining their rough understanding with the precision of a master. Then came the accidents. During a practical lesson on mana condensation, where students struggled to even form a stable orb of energy, Elian accidentally allowed a sliver of his true mastery to show. Instead of a flickering, unstable orb, a small, perfectly spherical mana construct, pulsating with a deep, vibrant blue, materialized in his palm. It was denser, purer, and significantly more stable than anything the instructors had ever seen a beginner accomplish. The instructor, a grizzled veteran mage named Master Borin, stared, his jaw agape. By the arcane lords, that's impossible for a first year, he stammered, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and profound admiration. Later, during a basic combat drill session where students clumsily practiced reinforcing their physical attacks with raw mana, Elian accidentally showcased a glimpse of his refined mana-infused strikes. He was sparring with a larger, older student who confidently lunged with a mana-charged fist. Elian, feigning a moment of panic, instinctively parried, his own hand glowing with a controlled, yet incredibly potent, mana reinforcement. The impact sent his opponent skidding several feet across the training ground, leaving a faint scorch mark where his feet dragged. The other students gasped. The combat instructor, a burly former soldier, merely blinked, then slowly shook his head in disbelief. "That wasn't just reinforcement, boy," he muttered, staring at Elian with a newfound respect. "That was controlled force, precision." These accidental displays were carefully calculated. Elian knew he couldn't hide his true abilities forever. He needed to establish his talent, to gain influence and recognition, to position himself as a future leader without revealing the true, terrifying extent of his knowledge. He needed allies, individuals whose trust he could earn, who would one day stand with him against the coming darkness. And his controlled revelations were already working. His unveiling drew immediate attention, particularly from two specific individuals. The first was Seraphina. She was a gifted but arrogant noble, her silver hair gleaming, her eyes sharp and assessing. As a highborn, she had always assumed her innate talent and noble lineage would guarantee her supremacy in the nascent magical world. She prided herself on her pure etheric bloodline, a lineage rumored to trace back to the first Mana Awakeners. She had watched Elian's accidents with a mixture of indignant disbelief and grudging fascination. Her competitive spirit, usually fueled by a sense of aristocratic superiority, was now genuinely piqued. She saw him not as a rival to be easily dismissed, but as a phenomenon, an enigma she couldn't quite categorize. "Did you see that, Theron?" Seraphina whispered to her flustered aide after Elian's mana condensation display, her voice laced with barely contained frustration. "His mana orb? It was perfect. Mine still flickers like a dying ember. It's utterly vexing. Who is this commoner?" Her initial annoyance quickly morphed into an almost obsessive curiosity, a burning need to understand what made Elian so uniquely talented. The second individual was Ryan, a quiet but insightful commoner. Unlike Seraphina, Ryan possessed no inherent noble status or flashy displays of power. He was an observer, his keen intellect and perceptive gaze noticing details others missed. He had a deep, almost intuitive understanding of mana mechanics, even with his limited personal talent. He had watched Elian not with envy, but with a quiet, analytical fascination. He saw beyond the accidents, sensing a depth of knowledge that transcended mere talent. He knew instinctively that Elian was more than he seemed. Ryan often sat in the back of the lecture halls, diligently taking notes, his worn clothes a stark contrast to the flamboyant attire of the noble students. He saw the subtle flickers in Elian's eyes, the almost imperceptible control in his movements, the way Elian seemed to anticipate the instructor's explanations. He recognized a fellow scholar, albeit one operating on an entirely different plane of understanding. He wasn't seeking power for himself. He was seeking knowledge, and Elian was a living, breathing repository of it. He holds back. Ryan thought, his eyes narrowed as he watched Elian effortlessly execute a complex theoretical problem during a mana theory class. He knows more than they teach us, more than the instructors themselves. Ryan felt a strange kinship with Elian, a silent acknowledgement of shared intellectual curiosity in a world obsessed with raw power. Elian felt their gazes, the weight of their attention. Seraphina's arrogant curiosity, Ryan's quiet insight. They were exactly the types he needed. Seraphina, with her high-born connections, her inherent magical talent, and her competitive drive, could be a powerful ally if her arrogance could be tempered. Kale knew from his past life that the noble houses, despite their flaws, would be crucial in organizing humanity's defense. Ryan, with his keen intellect and unassuming nature, could be an invaluable source of analytical support, a truly trustworthy confidant who could dissect complex problems. The challenge now was to cultivate these relationships, to subtly guide them towards his ultimate goal without revealing the full, terrifying truth of his past life. He couldn't simply tell them about the Demon Lord or the Abyss Gates. They would dismiss him as mad. He had to lead them, to teach them, to inspire them to reach for a level of mastery that transcended their current understanding of magic. He continued to excel, always maintaining the facade of a prodigious but still learning student. He subtly influenced classroom discussions, gently nudging his peers towards more efficient spellcasting methods, posing innocent questions that subtly pointed towards advanced mana manipulation techniques. He observed the social class tensions within the academy, the friction between commoner mages and noble-born practitioners, recognizing the same divisions that had weakened humanity in his past. He knew that for Ethel to survive, these divides needed to be bridged. The Ether Academy, once a symbol of humanity's magical awakening, was now Elian's training ground, his forge. He was honing not only his own skills but also shaping the future of magic in this world, preparing it for the inevitable clash against the encroaching darkness. Seraphina and Ryan, two unwitting pawns in his grand strategy, were already drawn into his orbit, their talents and their very destinies now inextricably linked with the quiet boy who held the memories of a forgotten apocalypse. The world was awakening to magic, but Elian was awakening it to war. And he, the child prodigy, was ready to lead the charge. Chapter 6. Rivalry and Revelations. The hallowed halls of the Ether Academy, once a place of nascent discovery, now hummed with the quiet, unsettling hum of a storm brewing. Elian, the unassuming child with the soul of Kyle, the ironclad vanguard, had become a lightning rod, his accidental displays of unparalleled talent igniting a wildfire of emotions among his peers. Admiration, awe, confusion, and most potently, a burning envy. The whispers of Manhwa were no longer just a faint song. They were a competitive roar, and Elian was setting an impossible standard. His strategic unveilings continued. During practical lessons, where others struggled with the complexities of elemental fusion, the intricate art of combining two opposing elements, Elian would, with feigned hesitation, produce a perfectly stable mana construct that shimmered with the combined essence of fire and water, a feat considered mastery even by the most advanced archmages in his previous life. He'd make it appear as if he was merely experimenting, a fortunate accident of raw talent. His tutors would gape, their own understanding of nascent magic insufficient to comprehend the true depth of his control. They would attribute it to an unprecedented affinity for multiple elements, a rare gift. This rapid, seemingly effortless progression, however, was a double-edged sword. While it cemented his image as an unparalleled genius, it also fueled the rivalry with Seraphina, the gifted but arrogant noble. Her initial peak had now blossomed into a fierce, almost obsessive drive to surpass him. She was a highborn accustomed to being at the apex of any hierarchy, her pure etheric bloodline a badge of innate superiority. Elian's consistent baffling displays challenged her very identity. Seraphina began to challenge him constantly. In every class, during every sparring session, her emerald eyes would lock onto him, radiating a competitive fire. Elian, she would declare, her voice sharp with a thinly veiled challenge. Show us how you truly manage that complex mana weave, or are you simply a trickster relying on fleeting luck? She wasn't just seeking to win, she was seeking to expose him, to find the limits of his seemingly boundless talent. She genuinely couldn't fathom how anyone, especially a commoner, could master techniques that even the most seasoned scholars of the Academy, still grappling with fundamental mana theory, found challenging. Her arrogance, born from her lineage and early successes, refused to accept his inherent superiority without a fight. These challenges, far from being a hindrance, were precisely what Elian needed. They provided the perfect cover, the ideal stage for him to strategically unveil the advanced techniques he had perfected years ago in the solitude of his childhood. He used Seraphina's constant provocations as opportunities to push his performance, but always with controlled precision, never revealing the absolute peak of his power. He would let her push him to the brink, creating the illusion of genuine struggle before revealing a solution that seemed to come to him in a flash of genius. During a high-level mana channeling exercise, where students were tasked with maintaining a sustained mana flow for an extended period, Seraphina pushed her limits, her face contorted in effort, her own mana draining rapidly. When she faltered, Elian, feigning a sudden inspiration, demonstrated a technique for mana regeneration and flow optimization that stunned the instructors. It wasn't a complex spell, but a subtle manipulation of the user's own internal arcane pathways, a method he had learned from mastering spiritual cultivation in his past life. He made it look like a new discovery, a brilliant insight, when in reality it was ancient wisdom. The instructors, while marveling at his ingenuity, were also baffled. It's as if he intuitively understands the very architecture of mana itself, Master Born exclaimed, rubbing his beard in bewilderment. He doesn't just learn a spell, he understands why it works, and then re-engineers it to be more efficient. This perception of Elian as a genius, who masters skills, almost instantly solidified. He became a living enigma, a legend whispered about in the academy halls. This rapid progression, however, also fostered suspicion. While many admired him, others, particularly those from powerful noble families who felt their own status threatened, viewed him with a cautious eye. Whispers circulated. Is he using forbidden magic? Is he some kind of prodigy sent by the ancient spirits, or something darker? The social class tensions within the academy, already simmering beneath the surface, were exacerbated by Elian's rise. A commoner achieving such impossible feats challenged the very foundation of their established order, where power was often tied to lineage and inherited talent. Rian, the quiet but insightful commoner, remained an unwavering observer. He saw beyond the awe and suspicion. He recognized the profound depth of Elian's understanding, the deliberate control in his accidental displays. Rian wasn't jealous. He was intellectually fascinated, perhaps even inspired. He spent hours studying Elian's subtle movements during drills, analyzing his seemingly spontaneous insights, trying to reverse engineer the true source of his genius. He saw the calculated risk, the careful unveiling, and a quiet respect for Elian's hidden burden began to grow within him. He's not just talented, Rian mused in his journal, his quill scratching softly in the quiet of the night. He's pre-programmed. Like he knows the answers before the questions are even asked. There's a pattern to his revelations, a strategic unveiling. He's teaching us, guiding us, without us even realizing it. Rian, with his keen analytical mind, was slowly, independently piecing together the true nature of Elian's genius. He was a potential confidant, a crucial ally who could truly understand the monumental task Elian faced. The trials became increasingly difficult, designed to push the limits of even the most gifted students. During an outdoor exercise where students had to navigate a dangerous mana-charged labyrinth filled with simulated elemental golems, Seraphina, pushing herself recklessly, found herself cornered by two powerful earth golems. Her wind spells were ineffective against their sturdy forms. It was a perilous situation, one designed to test their limits. Elian, seeing her predicament, accidentally unleashed a variant of his mana-infused combat technique. He didn't use a powerful spell. Instead, he demonstrated a technique for mana-enhanced physical strikes that concentrated arcane energy into a pinpoint attack, bypassing the golem's dense magical defenses. He struck the golem's core matrices, their weak points, with calculated precision, movements too fluid, too perfect for a boy his age. The golems crumbled into dust. Seraphina stared, her face a mixture of shock and reluctant admiration. How did you know their weaknesses?" she demanded, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. "That's an advanced elemental analysis technique, only whispered about in the Academy's highest echelons." She was both furious at his secrecy and awed by his sheer competence. Elian simply offered a disarming, innocent smile. It just made sense, the way their energy flows. He was carefully cultivating the image of an intuitive genius, a person whose understanding transcended formal learning. His actions, while baffling, solidified his position at the top of the academy. He wasn't just the best, he was in a league of his own, a phenomenon that defied easy explanation. The instructors began to assign him advanced projects, effectively allowing him to self-study, unaware that he was using their resources to further his own hidden curriculum. He delved into the Academy's vast library, seeking out obscure texts on ancient warding spells, dimensional theory, and the rare mentions of interdimensional entities, all knowledge that would be crucial in combating the Demon Lord and the Abyss Gates. The constant pressure, the need to maintain his facade, the subtle manipulation of his peers and instructors was a heavy burden. He felt the weight of the future, the coming apocalypse pressing down on him. He knew that every accidental revelation, every calculated display of talent was a step towards preparing humanity, towards forging the weapons and the knowledge that would be needed for survival. He was building his influence, consolidating his power base, not for personal gain, but for the sake of a world that didn't even know it was doomed. The rivalry with Seraphina continued to be a driving force, a constant push and pull that paradoxically benefited both of them. She pushed him to reveal more, and he, in turn, honed her skills by subtly challenging her, forcing her to reach for higher levels of mastery she never thought possible. Ryan, the silent observer, continued to collect data, his understanding of Elian's true nature growing more complete with each passing day. The Ether Academy was not just teaching magic, it was, unknowingly, nurturing the very savior of Ethel. Elian, the child prodigy, was becoming a figure of both awe and suspicion, an enigma destined to reshape the fate of his world, one unveiled talent at a time. The seeds of early mastery were now blossoming into an undeniable, terrifying genius, preparing the stage for the true battles to come. Chapter 7. The First Demon's Shadow. The gentle hum of nascent mana that had permeated Ethel was abruptly shattered, replaced by a chilling scream. It wasn't the cries of terrified children or the panicked shouts of villagers, but a guttural shriek that tore through the very fabric of reality. A sound Elian, the child with the soul of Kale, the ironclad vanguard, recognized with a cold, sickening dread. It was the roar of a demon. He was in a practical spellcasting lesson at the Ether Academy, feigning concentration on a basic elemental manipulation exercise when the first tremor hit. It wasn't an earthquake, but a resonant thrum that vibrated through the very ground, emanating from a distant point on the horizon. To the inexperienced students and even the bewildered instructors, it was an anomaly, an unexplainable disturbance. But to Elian, it was the unmistakable signature of a nascent abyss gate tearing open, a crack in the dimensional veil. Then came the visual confirmation. A jagged tear, like a rent in the sky, ripped open above the western plains, bleeding an unnatural, sickly green light onto the horizon. From within that tear, dark, twisted forms began to pour forth, their silhouettes growing larger, more distinct, with terrifying speed. The first demonic incursion of this new timeline had begun. Panic erupted within the academy. Students shrieked, their nascent mana cores flaring wildly with uncontrolled fear. Instructors who had only ever theorized about such threats stood frozen, their faces pale with terror. The world, so long untainted by true monstrosity, was suddenly confronted with a nightmare. The sheer incomprehension, the lack of any defense protocols for such an event, was glaring. But Elian felt a surge of cold, focused determination. This was it. The moment he had been preparing for, the very reason for his reincarnation, his past life, a torrent of battle strategies and arcane countermeasures against demonic hordes, surged to the forefront of his consciousness. He was no longer just Elian, the child prodigy. He was Kale, the ironclad vanguard, commander of armies, humanity's last hope. Silence. His voice, though still that of a youth, resonated with an undeniable authority, cutting through the cacophony of fear like a sharp blade. It wasn't a magically amplified shout, but the sheer force of his will, the ingrained habit of commanding legions. The students, bewildered, momentarily quieted, their gazes drawn to him. Instructors, form defensive lines around the academy perimeter. Elian barked, his eyes scanning the approaching demonic tide, assessing their numbers, their threat level. He recognized the lesser imps, fast, numerous, but weak to basic elemental spells. Behind them, the larger, more resilient gorehounds, creatures of pure hatred and brute force. Students with fire affinity, prepare flame bolt spells, aim for their eyes. Those with earth affinity create small barricades, focus on slowing their advance. He was rattling off commands, clear and concise, detailing tactics that were light years beyond anything taught in the academy's curriculum. The instructor stared at him, bewildered. "Child, what are you doing? We need to evacuate," Master Bourne exclaimed, still grappling with the sheer surrealism of the situation. They were used to academic theory, not frontline combat. "Evacuate where, Master?" Elian countered, his voice sharp, imbued with the desperate urgency of a man who had seen this apocalypse before. "The world is unprepared. There is no safe where. This is our only stand. We defend this academy, or we fall, and we fall here." He pointed a finger towards the rapidly approaching demons, his composure absolute amidst the chaos. "They are fast, but their numbers are not overwhelming yet. This is a probing force, a minor incursion. If we stop them now, we buy time for this world to truly awaken." His words, imbued with a chilling certainty, had a profound effect. The instructors, seeing the sheer, unwavering conviction in his young eyes, instincts honed by academic theory, began to stir. He was giving them orders, but they sounded like a plan, a lifeline in their terror. Seraphina, her face still pale with shock, snapped out of her stupor. Her noble lineage had instilled a sense of duty, and Elian's authority, inexplicable as it was, resonated with that deep-seated instinct. She began to direct her own cohort of students, her voice now firm. "You heard him. Form ranks, channel your mana." Kyle. Now Elian launched himself into action. He didn't wait for others. He was humanity's vanguard. He had to show them. He had to break their paralysis of fear. He moved to the front lines, his small body emanating a subtle yet powerful aura of pure, focused mana. He began to unleash spells with devastating precision, each one a testament to years of hidden mastery. While other students conjured flickering flame bolts, Elian's erupted with a focused intensity, streaks of pure, scorching fire that pierced through the tough hide of the approaching gorehounds, igniting their bodies into ash. He wasn't just casting spells, he was executing mana-optimized attacks, hitting vital points, exploiting weaknesses he knew from a lifetime of combat. He then demonstrated a rudimentary wind shear, a spell not yet conceived in this timeline, a precise blade of invisible force that sliced through the limbs of the advancing imps, felling them before they could even reach the academy walls. His movements were fluid, economical, each action a calculated strike designed to maximize damage and minimize mana expenditure. He was utilizing mana efficiency techniques that would only be discovered centuries later. Kyle, with his vast tactical experience, wasn't just unleashing power, he was orchestrating the defense. Seraphina, target the imps breaking through the left flank. Their speed is a distraction. Ryan, focus on mana disruption on the larger gorehounds. Cripple their mobility. His commands were instantaneous, reacting to every shift in the chaotic battlefield with the speed of a seasoned general. He had learned from countless past battles against similar incursions, understanding the demonic horde's typical formations and weak points. Rian, the quiet commoner, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and awe, instinctively followed Elian's commands. He had spent months observing Elian, subtly analyzing his accidents, and now, seeing Elian unleash his true prowess, his analytical mind could barely keep up. He channeled his own mana, attempting the disruption spell Elian commanded, finding a surprising ease in its execution, almost as if Elian had subtly prepared him for it. Seraphina, meanwhile, found herself acting on instinct, following Elian's directives with a furious determination. She, a noble who prided herself on leadership, found herself taking orders from a child, a commoner, yet his commands were undeniably effective, logical, saving lives with every word. She saw him shift, not just casting, but moving like a phantom, deflecting attacks, creating openings for others, his small figure weaving through the chaos with impossible grace. This wasn't just a gifted student, this was a warrior of unimaginable skill. A particularly large gorehound, its eyes burning with malevolent green light, broke through a faltering barricade, its sights set on a group of cowering students. Before any instructor could react, Elian materialized before it, his hand outstretched. He didn't cast a flamboyant spell. Instead, he unleashed a concentrated mana burst, a pure, compressed ball of arcane energy at point-blank range. The force of the impact was devastating. The gorehound roared, its form visibly warping, its momentum halted. Elian followed up with a mana-reinforced kick to its already injured leg, a precision strike that shattered its bone structure, collapsing it into a whimpering heap. He then did something truly astonishing. He didn't finish it off with a flashy spell. Instead, he conjured a minuscule, almost invisible mana seal, pressing it onto the creature's head. The gorehound's demonic energy flickered, its body going limp, but it wasn't dead. It was suppressed, neutralized, its energy contained. He knew from his past life that slain demons released dangerous corrupting ether, which could accelerate the opening of larger abyss gates. By sealing it, he prevented further ecological damage, a tactic far beyond the understanding of this era. The tide of the minor incursion turned rapidly. With Elian's tactical guidance and devastating precision, the demonic forces that had seemed overwhelming moments ago faltered, then began to retreat, scrambling back through the shimmering tear in the sky. The first demon's shadow had passed, leaving behind a battlefield of ash and fear, but also, miraculously, a defended academy. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the ragged breathing of the survivors. Students collapsed, trembling. Instructors stared at the closing abyss gate, then at Elian, their faces pale with a profound, terrifying awe. They had witnessed not just a prodigy, but a miracle. He had single-handedly turned the tide, saving countless lives. Elian, though physically drained, felt a grim satisfaction. He had shown them what was possible. He had solidified his reputation as an unparalleled prodigy, an almost legendary figure in the nascent magical society. But he also knew the cost. His actions, while heroic, had drawn the attention of darker forces. The retreating demons, even the lowly imps, carried data, sensory information back to their masters in the abyss. The demon lord or its lieutenants would now be aware of a powerful anomaly in this timeline, a singular point of resistance. He had shown his hand too early, perhaps, but it had been necessary. He had to prevent immediate collapse. He had to ensure this world had a fighting chance. Seraphina, her usual arrogance stripped away by the raw terror of the incursion, approached him, her emerald eyes wide with a newfound respect, tinged with a deep, unsettling wonder. "Elian, what are you?" she whispered, her voice devoid of its usual competitive edge. That wasn't just talent, that was a general, a master. She had seen him fight like a seasoned warrior, command like a king. Kale, his face grim, nodded in agreement. He didn't need to ask. He simply stared, a profound understanding passing between the warrior and the warrior reborn. He saw the burden in Elian's eyes, the weight of a future he alone remembered. Elian looked at them, at the terrified but now hopeful faces of the students, at the awestruck expressions of the instructors. He had saved them for now. But this was only the first ripple. The demon lord would not forget this. The abyss gates would open wider, unleashing greater horrors. He had solidified his reputation, yes, but he had also marked himself. The true war, the one he had returned to fight, had just begun. And this time, he wouldn't just be humanity's last hope. He would be its guiding light, its sword, and its shield from the very beginning. The shadow of the first demon had passed, but it left a chilling promise of darker things to come, and Elian was ready to meet them. Chapter 8. Ancient Knowledge, New Paths. The raw scent of ozone still lingered in the air, a phantom reminder of the recent demonic incursion that had shattered Ethel's innocence. Yet, within the Ether Academy, the atmosphere had irrevocably shifted. Fear remained, a chilling undercurrent, but it was now laced with a potent, desperate hope, all centered on one boy, Elian. His unparalleled display of tactical brilliance and devastating magical prowess had solidified his reputation not just as a prodigy, but as a potential savior. He was the whispered legend, the answer to a prayer no one even knew they were uttering. His actions had not only saved countless lives, but had also earned him immediate, unprecedented access to the Academy's restricted archives. These were not just ordinary libraries. They were sealed vaults, guarded by complex mana-imbued wards and ancient forgotten seals, containing knowledge deemed too dangerous, too potent for the average mage. Only the most esteemed scholars and highest-ranking officials of the Academy were ever granted entry. But for Elian, the boy who had stared down a demon horde and won, the doors swung open without question. The archives were a treasure trove, a labyrinth of dusty shelves stretching into shadowed oblivion, filled with scrolls and tomes that predated the current understanding of mana. The air within was thick with the scent of aged parchment and latent magic, a comforting aroma to Kale, the ironclad vanguard, whose past life had been steeped in forgotten lore. To the instructors, these were merely historical curiosities, outdated theories from a time before humanity fully grasped the arcane arts. To Elian, they were blueprints, prophecies, and forgotten manuals for a future that was rapidly becoming his present. He spent countless hours there, isolated from the world outside, his mind devouring every scrap of information. He didn't just read, he absorbed, analyzed, and cross-referenced with the vast knowledge stored within his reincarnated mind. His fingers, now subtly tinged with a faint mana glow from constant cultivation, traced the ancient runes, the forgotten scripts that hummed with dormant power. He uncovered lore about the true origins of mana. The accepted theory in this era was that mana was a recent, natural phenomenon, a gift from the elements. But the ancient texts spoke of something far older, far grander. They detailed the first mana flow, a cosmic river of pure, untamed energy that flowed through the very fabric of existence, connecting worlds. They hinted at how this flow had been consciously tapped by entities far more ancient than humanity, and how specific ley lines on Ethel were not merely natural formations, but conduits, almost like veins, through which this primordial energy coursed. This deeper understanding gave Elian profound insights into mana manipulation, far beyond the rudimentary techniques taught in the Academy. He realized that the future's reliance on mana cores and arcane circuits was a limited, inefficient use of a far vaster resource. Even more chilling were his discoveries about the nature of demonic entities. The current understanding in this nascent magical age was that demons were simply evil creatures, manifestations of chaotic energy. But the texts, some so old they crumbled at his touch, spoke of the abyssal domain not as a distant hell, but as a parallel dimension, a mirror world corrupted by a fundamental principle of anti-creation. They were not just monsters, they were beings of negative mana, a destructive counterpart to Ethel's life-giving energy. He learned of their intricate hierarchies, their societal structures, and most importantly, their profound vulnerabilities to specific types of pure mana and divine energy, knowledge that had been lost in the brutal attrition of his previous life. He read accounts of the demon lords, not as singular entities, but as embodiments of core abyssal principles, each with unique strengths and fatal flaws. This knowledge was gold. It was the key to victory. He also discovered forgotten pathways to power. These weren't simple spells or combat techniques. These were intricate rituals, complex meditation practices, and philosophical approaches to magic that intertwined with the very essence of the user's soul. He found detailed diagrams of soul-binding runes, ancient methods to infuse items with a user's life force, making them incredibly potent. He stumbled upon texts detailing etheric absorption, a forbidden technique that allowed mages to directly draw power from the universal ether, bypassing their mana core, but at immense personal risk. These were pathways that could lead to unprecedented strength, but also to madness or self-destruction if not wielded with absolute control. One particular section detailed the art of spellweaving, an ancient form of magic that didn't rely on rigid incantations or fixed runic formations, but on the fluid, intuitive manipulation of raw mana, allowing for spontaneous, adaptive spell creation. This was a concept utterly alien to the current Academy's curriculum, which focused on rote memorization and precise execution. Elian recognized it instantly from his previous life as the legendary near-mythical primal magic, practiced only by the most ancient and powerful beings. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Elian began to develop new, incredibly potent spells and combat techniques. He combined his vast past knowledge with the nascent understanding of this era, forging a unique synergy. He wasn't just relearning, he was innovating, creating. He took the rudimentary flame bolt spell taught at the Academy, and, by applying the ancient principles of mana compression and elemental resonance, he envisioned a spell that would condense the flame into a pinpoint of pure, explosive energy, capable of piercing demonic armor. In his mind, he perfected the runic sequences, adjusted the etheric flow, transforming a simple projectile into a miniature guided missile. For martial prowess, he adapted his past life's knowledge of soul-forged weaponry with the newly discovered soul-binding runes. He began to secretly imbue small, mundane objects, a simple training sword, a leather bracer with infinitesimal amounts of his own nascent spiritual energy. The items didn't glow or hum with power. Their enhancement was subtle, almost imperceptible. But he felt the connection, the minute increase in their durability, their sharpness, their responsiveness. This was the first step towards creating the legendary soul-forged greatsword he had once wielded, a weapon that would become an extension of his very being. His solitude in the archives was a period of intense intellectual and magical growth. He grappled with the implications of his discoveries, the social class tensions of his past life, had often been exacerbated by knowledge disparities, with powerful, noble houses hoarding arcane secrets. But here, he had access to fundamental truths, knowledge that could empower everyone, if disseminated correctly. This was his chance to guide this world away from the pitfalls of his past, to foster a truly unified humanity against the coming darkness. The Academy instructors, while allowing him access, remained largely unaware of the true depth of his research. They saw him as a studious prodigy, poring over old books, perhaps indulging a historical curiosity. They would occasionally glance at his notes filled with intricate diagrams and complex equations that made no sense to their current understanding, and simply shake their heads in bewildered admiration. "That boy's mind works in ways we can barely fathom," Master Bourne would often remark. Elian understood the immense responsibility that came with this unearthed knowledge. These new paths to power were dangerous. The etheric absorption technique, for instance, could easily burn out a mage's mana core if misused. The soul-binding runes, if incorrectly applied, could lead to a permanent spiritual drain. He had to be cautious, selective in what he eventually revealed, guiding others towards safer, more controlled methods before introducing them to the truly potent yet perilous avenues of power. He was not just teaching, he was safeguarding. His internal monologues became more focused, less on frustration, more on strategic planning. The abyss gates will open with greater frequency. The demon lords will send stronger forces. I must prepare not just myself, but this world. I must introduce these powers in a way that allows humanity to adapt, to grow strong, without destroying itself in the process. He envisioned a new combat doctrine that integrated magic and martial arts seamlessly, a philosophy of war far more advanced than anything known in this era. As he emerged from the archives, blinking in the Academy's soft sunlight, he carried not just knowledge, but a profound transformation. He was no longer simply recalling the past. He was actively shaping the future. His understanding of mana, of demonic entities, and of the very fabric of power was now absolute, refined, and ready to be implemented. The seeds of early mastery had blossomed into a formidable, almost terrifying intellect. The challenges ahead were immense, but Elian was no longer just the regressor, reliving a nightmare. He was the architect of a new dawn, armed with ancient knowledge and forging new paths to power. The whispers of mana were now a symphony to his ears, and he was ready to conduct it, to lead Ethel into a future it never thought possible, prepared for the inevitable confrontation with the demon lord. The fate of humanity rested on the knowledge gleaned from forgotten texts and the power born from a reborn soul. And Elian, the child prodigy, was ready to begin his true work. Chapter 9. Conspiracy and Corruption? Important instructions. Write it as one continuous flow of narration. No headings like Scene 1, Scene 2, etc. The narration should be cinematic, dramatic, and emotionally rich. Use third-person storytelling with inner monologues, vivid description of actions, emotions, environment, and powers. Follow the exact structure, pacing, and language style used in the competitor script I provided earlier. Use natural transitions. Keep things flowing without obvious cuts or labels. No unnecessary repetition. No filler. The entire script must stay 100% related to the chapter summary. Add dialogue where needed. Describe reactions and intensify conflict drama wherever possible. Include world building. Explain powers, diseases, systems, social class tension, etc., like the competitor does. Now here's my chapter. Chapter 8. Ancient Knowledge. New paths recognized for his unparalleled abilities. Elian gains access to the Academy's restricted archives. He pores over ancient forgotten texts, uncovering lore about the true origins of mana and the nature of demonic entities. He discovers forgotten pathways to power and develops new, incredibly potent spells by combining his past knowledge with the nascent understanding of this era. The raw scent of ozone still lingered in the air, a phantom reminder of the recent demonic incursion that had shattered Ethel's innocence. Yet within the Ether Academy, the atmosphere had irrevocably shifted. Fear remained, a chilling undercurrent, but it was now laced with a potent, desperate hope, all centered on one boy, Elian. His unparalleled display of tactical brilliance and devastating magical prowess had solidified his reputation not just as a prodigy, but as a potential savior. He was the whispered legend, the answer to a prayer no one even knew they were uttering. His actions had not only saved countless lives, but had also earned him immediate, unprecedented access to the Academy's restricted archives. These were not just ordinary libraries. They were sealed vaults, guarded by complex mana-imbued wards and ancient forgotten seals, containing knowledge deemed too dangerous, too potent for the average mage. Only the most esteemed scholars and highest-ranking officials of the Academy were ever granted entry, but for Elian, the boy who had stared down a demon horde and won, the doors swung open without question. The archives were a treasure trove, a labyrinth of dusty shelves stretching into shadowed oblivion, filled with scrolls and tomes that predated the current understanding of mana. The air within was thick with the scent of aged parchment and latent magic, a comforting aroma to Kyle, the iron-clad vanguard, whose past life had been steeped in forgotten lore. To the instructors, these were merely historical curiosities, outdated theories from a time before humanity fully grasped the arcane arts. To Elian, they were blueprints, prophecies, and forgotten manuals for a future that was rapidly becoming his present. He spent countless hours there, isolated from the world outside, his mind devouring every scrap of information. He didn't just read, he absorbed, analyzed, and cross-referenced with the vast knowledge stored within his reincarnated mind. His fingers, now subtly tinged with a faint mana glow from constant cultivation, traced the ancient runes, the forgotten scripts that hummed with dormant power. He uncovered lore about the true origins of mana. The accepted theory in this era was that mana was a recent, natural phenomenon, a gift from the elements. But the ancient texts spoke of something far older, far grander. They detailed the first mana flow, a cosmic river of pure, untamed energy that flowed through the very fabric of existence, connecting worlds. They hinted at how this flow had been consciously tapped by entities far more ancient than humanity, and how specific ley lines on Ethel were not merely natural formations but conduits, almost like veins, through which this primordial energy coursed. This deeper understanding gave Elian profound insights into mana manipulation, far beyond the rudimentary techniques taught in the Academy. He realized that the future's reliance on mana cores and arcane circuits was a limited, inefficient use of a far vaster resource. Even more chilling were his discoveries about the nature of demonic entities. The current understanding in this nascent magical age was that demons were simply evil creatures, manifestations of chaotic energy. But the texts, some so old they crumbled at his touch, spoke of the abyssal domain, not as a distant hell, but as a parallel dimension, a mirror world corrupted by a fundamental principle of anti-creation. They were not just monsters, they were beings of negative mana, a destructive counterpart to Ethel's life-giving energy. He learned of their intricate hierarchies, their societal structures, and most importantly, their profound vulnerabilities to specific types of pure mana and divine energy, knowledge that had been lost in the brutal attrition of his previous life. He read accounts of the demon lords, not as singular entities, but as embodiments of core abyssal principles, each with unique strengths and fatal flaws. This knowledge was gold. It was the key to victory. He also discovered forgotten pathways to power. These weren't simple spells or combat techniques. These were intricate rituals, complex meditation practices, and philosophical approaches to magic that intertwined with the very essence of the user's soul. He found detailed diagrams of soul-binding runes, ancient methods to infuse items with a user's life force, making them incredibly potent. He stumbled upon texts detailing etheric absorption, a forbidden technique that allowed mages to directly draw power from the universal ether, bypassing their mana core, but at immense personal risk. These were pathways that could lead to unprecedented strength, but also to madness or self-destruction if not wielded with absolute control. One particular section detailed the art of spellweaving, an ancient form of magic that didn't rely on rigid incantations or fixed runic formations, but on the fluid, intuitive manipulation of raw mana, allowing for spontaneous, adaptive spell creation. This was a concept utterly alien to the current Academy's curriculum, which focused on rote memorization and precise execution. Elian recognized it instantly from his previous life as the legendary, near-mythical primal magic, practiced only by the most ancient and powerful beings. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Elian began to develop new, incredibly potent spells and combat techniques. He combined his vast past knowledge with the nascent understanding of this era, forging a unique synergy. He wasn't just relearning, he was innovating, creating. He took the rudimentary Flame Bolt spell taught at the Academy, and by applying the ancient principles of mana compression and elemental resonance, he envisioned a spell that would condense the flame into a pinpoint of pure explosive energy, capable of piercing demonic armor. In his mind, he perfected the runic sequences, adjusted the etheric flow, transforming a simple projectile into a miniature guided missile. For martial prowess, he adapted his past life's knowledge of soul-forged weaponry with the newly discovered soul-binding runes. He began to secretly imbue small, mundane objects, a simple training sword, a leather bracer, with infinitesimal amounts of his own nascent spiritual energy. The items didn't glow or hum with power. Their enhancement was subtle, almost imperceptible, but he felt the connection, the minute increase in their durability, their sharpness, their responsiveness. This was the first step towards creating the legendary soul-forged greatsword he had once wielded, a weapon that would become an extension of his very being. His solitude in the archives was a period of intense intellectual and magical growth. He grappled with the implications of his discoveries. The social class tensions of his past life had often been exacerbated by knowledge disparities, with powerful noble houses hoarding arcane secrets. But here, he had access to fundamental truths, knowledge that could empower everyone, if disseminated correctly. This was his chance to guide this world away from the pitfalls of his past, to foster a truly unified humanity against the coming darkness. The Academy instructors, while allowing him access, remained largely unaware of the true depth of his research. They saw him as a studious prodigy, poring over old books, perhaps indulging a historical curiosity. They would occasionally glance at his notes, filled with intricate diagrams and complex equations that made no sense to their current understanding, and simply shake their heads in bewildered admiration. "That boy's mind works in ways we can barely fathom," Master Bourne would often remark. Elian understood the immense responsibility that came with this unearthed knowledge. These new paths to power were dangerous. The etheric absorption technique, for instance, could easily burn out a mage's mana core if misused. The soul-binding runes, if incorrectly applied, could lead to a permanent spiritual drain. He had to be cautious, selective in what he eventually revealed, guiding others towards safer, more controlled methods before introducing them to the truly potent yet perilous avenues of power. He was not just teaching, he was safeguarding. His internal monologues became more focused, less on frustration, more on strategic planning. The abyss gates will open with greater frequency. The demon lords will send stronger forces. I must prepare not just myself, but this world. I must introduce these powers in a way that allows humanity to adapt, to grow strong, without destroying itself in the process. He envisioned a new combat doctrine that integrated magic and martial arts seamlessly, a philosophy of war far more advanced than anything known in this era. As he emerged from the archives, blinking in the Academy's soft sunlight, he carried not just knowledge, but a profound transformation. He was no longer simply recalling the past. He was actively shaping the future. His understanding of mana, of demonic entities, and of the very fabric of power was now absolute, refined, and ready to be implemented. The seeds of early mastery had blossomed into a formidable, almost terrifying, intellect. The challenges ahead were immense, but Elian was no longer just the regressor reliving a nightmare. He was the architect of a new dawn, armed with ancient knowledge and forging new paths to power. The whispers of mana were now a symphony to his ears, and he was ready to conduct it, to lead Ethel into a future it never thought possible, prepared for the inevitable confrontation with the Demon Lord. The fate of humanity rested on the knowledge gleaned from forgotten texts and the power born from a reborn soul, and Elian, the child prodigy, was ready to begin his true work. Guys, success prompt. I want you to act as a professional manhwa recap scriptwriter who writes in the exact storytelling format used by the top channels in this genre. Below, I'll give you a short chapter summary, around 70 words, from a fantasy manhwa story. Your task is to expand this chapter into a continuous, immersive, and emotionally compelling 3,000-word script written like a full episode narration. Important instructions. Write it as one continuous flow of narration, no headings like Scene 1, Scene 2, etc. The narration should be cinematic, dramatic, and emotionally rich. Use third-person storytelling with inner monologues, vivid description of actions, emotions, environment, and powers. Follow the exact structure, pacing, and language style used in the competitor script I provided earlier. Use natural transitions. Keep things flowing without obvious cuts or labels. No unnecessary repetition. No filler. The entire script must stay 100% related to the chapter summary. Add dialogue where needed. Describe reactions. And intensify conflict drama wherever possible. Include world building. Explain powers, diseases, systems, social class, tension, etc., like the competitor does. Now here's my chapter. Chapter 9, Conspiracy and Corruption. Elian uncovers a hidden conspiracy within the magical hierarchy, a cabal attempting to manipulate the early magical awakening for their own nefarious purposes. These individuals unknowingly serve as unwitting pawns for the same demonic forces Kale fought in his past life. He must now use his early mastery to subtly dismantle their plans without revealing the full extent of his foresight. The hallowed halls of the Ether Academy, once a sanctuary of nascent magical learning, now felt like a viper's nest to Elian. His recent, unparalleled display against the demonic incursion had granted him access to the restricted archives, a trove of ancient knowledge that illuminated the true nature of mana and the insidious threat of the abyssal domain. But with that profound understanding came a chilling revelation. The enemy wasn't just at the gates. It was lurking within. As he delved deeper into the Academy's operations, using his keen intellect and heightened observational skills, Elian began to notice inconsistencies, subtle anomalies in the flow of information, the allocation of resources, and the curious rise of certain individuals within the nascent magical hierarchy. It was a gradual unfolding, like watching a complex tapestry being woven with dark, discordant threads. His past life as Kale, the ironclad vanguard, a veteran of countless political battles and military campaigns against the Demon Lord's cunning forces, had honed his sense for conspiracy and deception. He knew the scent of corruption, and it hung heavy in the air of the Academy. He observed the Council of Elders, the governing body of the Ether Academy, supposedly dedicated to guiding humanity's magical awakening. He saw how certain members, ostensibly powerful mana users and respected scholars, seemed to subtly steer decisions in ways that benefited specific noble families or particular ideological factions. This wasn't surprising, given the inherent social class tensions of this era, where power often gravitated towards wealth and lineage. What chilled Elian, however, was the insidious undercurrent he detected beneath their ambitions. He found discrepancies in the mana ley line mapping, a seemingly innocuous project to chart the flow of mana across the kingdom. Certain powerful ley lines, vital for future arcane gate formations and large-scale mana harvesting, were being quietly diverted, their energies funneled towards obscure, privately owned lands belonging to a select few influential figures. This wasn't merely greed, it was strategic. The sheer scale and secrecy involved hinted at a grander design, a deliberate manipulation of Ethel's fundamental mana infrastructure. Elian, utilizing his advanced understanding of elemental affinities and etheric flow, also began to notice subtle shifts in the ambient mani around certain individuals, a faint, almost imperceptible distortion, a slight sourness to its taste, like a discordant note in a symphony. It was the barely perceptible mark of demonic influence, a lingering miasma he knew from his past life. These individuals, ostensibly powerful human mages, were unknowingly serving as unwitting pawns for the very demonic forces Kale had fought in his past life. They were not consciously evil, not fully corrupted, but their ambitions, their desires for power and influence, were being subtly nudged, manipulated by an unseen hand. The abyssal domain's influence, he realized, wasn't just brute force, it was insidious. A whispering poison that twisted minds and corrupted hearts from within. His heart tightened with a familiar dread. This was a repeat of history, but in its nascent stages. In his past life, the Demon Lord had exploited humanity's internal divisions, sowing discord and empowering greedy individuals, ultimately weakening their unified defense. This cabal, with their seemingly mundane ambitions, was inadvertently laying the groundwork for a far greater catastrophe. They were preparing the ground not for humanity's magical ascension, but for its ultimate downfall. The ethical dilemma he had grappled with earlier intensified. He couldn't simply expose them. Accusations of demonic influence, especially against powerful figures, would be dismissed as madness, or worse, turn him into a target. He lacked concrete proof that would be understood in this era before the full revelation of the demonic threat. He had to dismantle their plan subtly, without revealing the full extent of his foresight, without showing all his cards. He had to move like a ghost, a silent guardian in the shadows. His strategy became multifaceted, utilizing his early mastery in ways that seemed innocuous. Firstly, he began to subtly influence public perception and academy curriculum. During theoretical lessons, he would innocently pose questions or offer insights drawn from the forgotten texts in the restricted archives. He'd ask, for instance, about the theoretical dangers of unbalanced mana accumulation in specific areas, subtly hinting at the risks of the ley line diversions without directly accusing anyone. He would suggest alternative, more efficient methods of mana channeling that, unbeknownst to others, were actually designed to strengthen the kingdom's natural defensive mana fields, counteracting the Cabal's efforts. His reputation as a genius ensured his suggestions were often taken seriously, leading to minor adjustments in policies or research priorities. Secondly, he used his advanced understanding of elemental affinities and mana control to subtly sabotage their minor schemes. If a specific ley line was being secretly diverted, Elian would find ways to introduce a minor localized mana instability in that area, making it difficult for the Cabal's mages to properly channel the energy without causing unintended small-scale backlashes. He would make it appear as if the ley line itself was simply unstable, requiring further research and preventing immediate full-scale exploitation. These were controlled acts of digital sabotage, undetectable to all but him. He often approached Ryan, the quiet but insightful commoner, seeking his opinion on seemingly abstract mana theories or historical energy flows. Ryan, with his keen analytical mind, would unknowingly provide Elian with crucial observations, confirming his suspicions or pointing out subtle details Elian might have overlooked. Elian would then subtly guide Ryan's research, encouraging him to publish papers on anomalies in mana distribution, effectively spreading knowledge that would unknowingly expose the Cabal's manipulations, all while maintaining Ryan's academic integrity. Ryan, brilliant and honest, became an unwitting ally in exposing the truth. His rivalry with Seraphina, though still intense, provided another unexpected avenue. Her constant challenges pushed him to reveal more of his abilities, but also gave him opportunities to observe her lineage's subtle connections to the unfolding conspiracy. He noticed her family's lands often bordered the manipulated ley lines, and her father, a high-ranking noble, was a vocal proponent of some of the Academy's more questionable policies. While Seraphina herself was likely innocent, her position made her a valuable, if unwitting, source of information and a potential powerful ally. Once she grasped the true threat, He continued to push her, subtly teaching her advanced defensive spells and mana-binding techniques that would eventually be crucial against the demonic forces and against potentially corrupted human enemies. One evening, Elian overheard a hushed conversation between two minor members of the Cabal, seemingly mundane nobles discussing a hidden vault, an ancient ritual site, where they planned to conduct a large-scale mana redirection ritual, believing it would grant them immense personal power. Elian recognized the description from the forbidden texts. It was a site designed for summoning, a subtle distortion of a planar conduit, a place where the veil between Ethel and the abyssal domain was thin. These fools, in their pursuit of power, were unwittingly preparing a larger gateway for the demons. He had to act subtly, but decisively. He couldn't storm the site. He was still a child. Instead, using his deep understanding of ancient warding spells and dimensional theory, he crafted a series of seemingly harmless, mana-infused charms. Small, intricately carved wooden trinkets, imbued with subtle anti-demonic frequencies and disruptive mana pulses. He then anonymously left them in locations where the Cabal's mages would discover them, promoting them as lucky charms or experimental mana amplifiers. These charmed items, designed to disrupt demonic influence, would inadvertently interfere with the Cabal's ritual, making it impossible to perform without catastrophic failure. The ritual would collapse, appearing as a simple, inexplicable malfunction, turning the Cabal's ambition into a humiliating setback. But without exposing Elian, the mental strain of this double life, of constantly hiding his true nature, of battling an unseen insidious enemy, was immense. He lived under the constant pressure of knowing the future, of seeing the subtle threads of disaster being woven, yet being forced to act indirectly, almost imperceptibly. He felt the weight of every life he couldn't openly save, every mistake he couldn't overtly prevent. The knowledge of the Demon Lord's ultimate victory in his past life fueled his relentless drive, but also burdened him with a chilling sense of urgency. He continued to master new spells and refine existing ones, focusing on techniques that could counter demonic powers and provide large-scale defense. He practiced divine energy manipulation, drawing on the residual power of his soul-forged greatsword's memories, preparing for the day he could truly wield its power again. He studied the intricate political structures of the various kingdoms within Ethel, identifying potential alliances and future points of conflict, strategically positioning himself to influence them when the time was right. The conspiracy within the magical hierarchy, though hidden, was slowly being unraveled, its nefarious plans subtly dismantled by the silent architect. Elian was not just a child prodigy, he was a master puppeteer, pulling strings unseen, guiding Ethel towards a destiny it didn't even know it was fighting for. He was playing a dangerous high-stakes game of chess, with the future of humanity as the ultimate prize. The Demon Lord's unwitting pawns continued their machinations, oblivious to the fact that they were being countered by the very warrior they had once defeated. The shadow of the first demon had passed, but the true battle against the encroaching darkness was being fought, silently, subtly, in the very heart of humanity. Chapter 10. Regression's True Purpose. The insidious threads of conspiracy, woven by the ambition of a corrupted cabal, were unraveling beneath Elian's silent machinations. Yet, as the minor schemers stumbled and their plans faltered, a profound sense of dread settled over him. His past life as Kyle, the ironclad vanguard, screamed a warning. This wasn't just human greed. This was the lingering presence of something far more ancient, far more malevolent. The demonic forces weren't merely influencing pawns. A true orchestrator lurked in the shadows. His meticulous work in the Ether Academy's restricted archives had provided him with the theoretical knowledge, and his secret observations of the Cabal's activities had given him the practical clues. The increasingly powerful mana ley lines being subtly diverted, the eerie resonance of negative mana in certain ritual sites, these weren't random anomalies. They were a signature he knew with a sickening certainty from a lifetime of war against the abyssal domain. He followed the faint, almost imperceptible trails of corrupted mana, a hidden thread weaving through the seemingly innocuous events of the Academy. His enhanced mana sensitivity, honed through years of secret cultivation, and his innate understanding of etheric flow, allowed him to perceive distortions others couldn't. It led him to the deepest, most forgotten catacombs beneath the academy itself, a place sealed for centuries, rumored to contain nothing but dust and forgotten history. But Elian knew better. He knew of the ancient wards and dimensional seals that would be employed to conceal something truly significant. The air in the catacombs grew colder, heavier, saturated with a chilling sense of dread. The faint hum of mana that permeated the rest of the academy was replaced by a discordant thrum, a subtle but persistent vibration of demonic energy. It was faint, skillfully masked, but unmistakable to Kale's experienced soul. This wasn't a minor incursion. This was a presence. He reached a vast, circular chamber, its ancient stone inscribed with forgotten runes of binding and containment, now flickering erratically. In the center, a shimmering, almost invisible barrier pulsed with raw power, and behind it, he saw it. The true mastermind, a remnant of a powerful demon from his past life. It wasn't a fully manifested demon lord, not yet. Its form was ethereal, semi-transparent, clinging to the barrier like a malevolent phantom, but its essence was undeniable. It was a vestige of chaos, a fragment of a greater demon that had, through some unfathomable act of desperation or cunning, survived the cataclysm of his previous timeline by latching onto this timeline's nascent magic. It had been slowly feeding on the emerging mana, subtly influencing the Cabal, pushing them towards rituals that would eventually fully manifest its power, opening a true abyss gate on a scale far grander than the minor incursion he had thwarted. This was the entity that had twisted Rourke in his previous life, that had corrupted minds and sown discord. "So you found me, little sprout." A voice slithered into Elian's mind, not through his ears, but directly into his consciousness, cold and ancient and utterly devoid of warmth. It was a voice that echoed with the screams of a forgotten war, a voice he remembered from his dying moments on the battlefield against the Demon Lord. Such a keen eye for one so young. But what can a child do against true power? I have slept for eons, feeding, growing, waiting for Ethel to ripen. The demon's form pulsed with a sickening green light, its ethereal tendrils reaching out, attempting to penetrate the barrier and corrupt Elian's mind. He felt the insidious whispers, the tempting promises of absolute power if he simply yielded, if he joined its cause. But Elian, fortified by his unwavering purpose and the knowledge of a past apocalypse, resisted. He stepped forward, his eyes, usually wide and innocent, now burning with the cold resolve of Kyle. "You escaped the end of one world," Elian stated, his child's voice unwavering against the psychic assault, "but you will not bring it to this one." The demon cackled, a dry, rasping sound that reverberated through the catacombs. "Foolish child, you have no idea of my power. This world is a blank canvas ready to be painted crimson, and you are merely an anomaly, a glitch in the grand design. You can be removed." The barrier protecting the demon began to crackle, unstable. It was not a physical barrier, but a complex mana seal woven from ancient wards. Elian knew it wouldn't hold. The demon had been slowly corrupting it, preparing for its full manifestation. This was the moment, the climactic battle, the true test of his regression. He took a fighting stance, his small body radiating an aura of immense controlled power. He wouldn't hold back. Not this time. He was no longer trying to subtly guide or discreetly maneuver. He was here to fight, to ensure the apocalypse never truly began. The demon lashed out, its ethereal tendrils slamming against the cracking barrier, sending shock waves of negative mana rippling through the chamber. The very air grew cold, oppressive. Elian unleashed the full spectrum of his early mastered, perfectly refined skills. He started with Arcane Barrage, a spell he had refined from a basic flame bolt into a torrent of condensed, pure mana projectiles. But instead of fire, these were infused with a subtle divine energy, the essence he had cultivated from the lingering memories of his soul-forged greatsword. Golden streaks of light tore through the chamber, impacting the barrier, not destroying it, but weakening the demonic energy that pulsed within. The demon shrieked, its ethereal form flickering. "Impossible! That is, purifying mana. It should not exist in this era." It recognized the ancient, near-forgotten power. Elian moved like a blur, a true master of mana-enhanced combat. He dodged a wave of concentrated abyssal corruption the demon hurled at him, his movements fluid, precise, honed by decades of fighting similar attacks. He then unleashed a mana-infused strike against a specific point on the barrier, a weakness he perceived through his intimate understanding of dimensional seals. His punch, seemingly weak for a child, struck with the force of a battering ram, fueled by years of mana compression and physical conditioning. The barrier shattered with a deafening crack. The demonic essence coalesced, taking on a more defined, terrifying form, a shadowy figure wreathed in tendrils of dark energy, its eyes burning with malevolent green light, a miniature yet equally terrifying version of the demon lord he had faced in his previous life. "You are bold, child, but you are still just one," the demon roared, its voice now physical echoing through the chamber. It lunged, its claws dripping with corrosive negative mana, aiming for Elian's nascent mana core. Elian met the assault head-on. He didn't flinch. He countered with a spell he had perfected from the art of spellweaving, an ancient technique he had rediscovered. No incantations, no runic formations, just pure intuitive control. He conjured a swirling vortex of pure ether, a miniature whirlpool of cosmic energy, directly in the demon's path. The demonic claws sank into the vortex, their corrosive energy being absorbed, neutralized. He then created a series of rapidly firing mana blades, not the crude constructs of this era, but razor-sharp blades of pure mana, infused with elemental resonance for maximum impact. They struck the demon repeatedly, not just dealing damage, but disrupting its ethereal form, causing it to flicker and distort. The battle was a dance of overwhelming power and absolute control. The demon, fueled by its ancient malice, threw everything it had at Elian: psychic attacks, corrosive mana blasts, physical assaults. But Elian countered every move, his every action a testament to his foresight and rigorous preparation. He used mana manipulation to erect temporary arcane wards that dissolved the demon's attacks. He utilized etheric absorption in controlled bursts, siphoning off some of the demon's own negative energy and converting it into pure mana for his own use. A truly devastating feedback loop. As the battle raged, a profound realization washed over Elian. His regression wasn't just a random second chance, a fortunate accident of a desperate dying wish. It was more. It felt intended. The precise timing, the preservation of his memories and skills, the unlocking of his extraordinary cognitive abilities as a child, his access to forgotten knowledge, his innate connection to the Chronos Shard, it all pointed to something grander. This wasn't just fate, he thought, his eyes burning with renewed resolve as he parried a furious demonic strike. This was a divine intervention, a hand from outside of time itself, reaching back, empowering him, granting him the power to alter destiny itself. His very existence in this timeline, armed with knowledge of the future, was a fundamental rewrite of causality. He channeled every ounce of his energy, every shred of his conviction, into one final decisive blow. He combined the soul-binding runes he had adapted with the pure mana and divine energy he could now flawlessly command. He focused it all into his hands, forming a glowing golden orb that thrummed with overwhelming power. This was not a spell from his past, nor a discovery of this era. This was something new, something he had forged, a weapon born of two timelines, perfected to combat the very essence of the abyss. "Your apocalypse ends here," Elian roared, his child's voice resonating with the authority of a king, a battle cry that echoed the unyielding spirit of Kale. He hurled the glowing orb. The orb slammed into the demonic remnant, not with an explosion, but with a profound, consuming light. The demon shrieked, a sound of agony and despair, as its ethereal form began to unravel. Its essence, its very connection to this timeline, was being systematically purged, dissolved by the pure, concentrated energy of Liam's final attack. It wasn't just being defeated, it was being unmade. Its ability to latch on to nascent mana forever severed. The insidious presence, the architect of the looming apocalypse, was utterly destroyed. The chamber filled with a blinding golden light, then settled into a profound, almost sacred silence. The oppressive cold receded, replaced by a warmth that permeated every stone. The lingering hum of demonic energy vanished completely, leaving behind only the gentle, harmonious song of pure mana. Elian stood breathing heavily but upright. He felt the vast expanse of his fully awakened powers, his mana core radiating with limitless energy, his understanding of etheric flow absolute. His early mastered, perfectly refined skills were now limitless, intertwined with the very fabric of this pristine world. He had not just prevented an incursion, he had prevented the apocalypse from ever truly beginning. He had altered destiny itself. He had regressed to save a world, and in doing so, had become its true protector, its ultimate sovereign. He was no longer just a mere player, nor simply a regressor. He was the architect of destiny, the vanguard of a new era. The king of humanity had found his true purpose, not in fighting a losing battle, but in rewriting the very future. He was ready to guide this world, to nurture its magic, to ensure its prosperity, and to forever stand as its shield against any shadow that dared to threaten its newfound peace. The era of true magic had dawned, and Elyon, the child with the soul of a king, stood at its glorious, triumphant dawn.